Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Children of the Depressed, Healing the Childhood Wounds That Come from Growing Up with a Depressed Parent, by Shoshana Bennett, Ph.D. Foreword by Nelson Branco, M.D. Narrated by Subhadra Newton. Foreword. As a primary care pediatrician, I am often corrected when I refer to the parents of the children in my practice as my patients. Strictly speaking, they are not. Unlike a family physician, I don't check their blood pressure or cholesterol or listen for heart murmurs in their chests. But the health of the children in my practice is directly related to the health and behaviors of their parents. Cigarette smoking is an obvious example. Second-hand and third-hand smoke affects the health of children in many ways. What is less obvious are the effects of modeling. Having a parent who smokes makes it twice as likely that you will begin smoking as a teenager. Whether consciously or unconsciously, we are constantly modeling behavior and attitudes for our children. In the course of my day, I interview and examine children while talking to them about healthy habits and behaviors. I spend just as much effort interviewing parents, trying to get a sense of their personal challenges as parents and what resources they have to help them along this important journey. A depressed parent is part of a child's family history, the list of diagnoses and conditions that are more likely because of their genetic makeup. A depressed parent also becomes an important part of the social history, things that affect a child directly or indirectly. Family support, living situation, socioeconomic class, education, pets, environmental exposures, and parental employment. A depressed parent has a hard time caring for his or her family. This is no secret. How children experience this affects their childhood, their adulthood, and their own parenting. Scientists of varied disciplines have taught us a great deal about the mind over the past 20 years. Using advanced techniques and research methods, we now know that the brain is not static. There is growth and change throughout much of our lives. Neuroplasticity, epigenetics, toxic stress, cortical remapping, critical period of brain development, neurogenesis, and DNA methylation are all terms that have become part of our scientific vocabulary. While the past imprints on us and influences our future, there is no doubt that we humans are capable of great change and can understand, overcome, and redirect the course of our lives. Our current biology is not our destiny, nor are we a sum of our genetics and experiences. There are variables and mutations not yet understood, all of which we can modify and in some way control. Children of the Depressed represents hope and power, those listeners whose early years and critical periods were challenged by the presence of a depressed parent will gain the hope that they can understand and overcome this difficult period, and the power to begin the healing process. I have had parents in my office describing a difficult situation in their own childhood who have said, "It stops here. It stops with me." This book helps make that statement a reality. Understanding what has been imprinted in your genes and your psyche by a depressed parent is the first step toward overcoming it. This is how you help yourself and your family. Children of the Depressed will help you examine the past, learn from your experiences, understand how they influence you even now, and then look forward with strength and resolve. Most of all, I think this book will give you hope, and that hope will be the fuel for your journey. Nelson Branco, M.D., FAAP. Tamalpais Pediatrics, Greenbrae, California. Introduction. No one wants to be depressed or to be directly touched by depression. Not you, not your parents or caregivers, and not your siblings or children, if you have any. None of us wants depression in our lives. Depression is awful. It stinks in every way. There is no romance, no fun, and no joy in depression. While grief, and some degree of psychological suffering is a normal part of life that none of us can completely escape, depression is something quite different. Depression is more than a bit of a thief. It can rob us, taking the wind right out of our sails, the air right out of our lungs, and the meaning right out of our lives. At least, that's how it feels at the time. It can even take away our parents. If you have one or more parents or caregivers who have suffered from depression, you know what I'm talking about. If your mom or dad suffered or suffers from depression, it may feel like you didn't or still don't really have your mom or dad present as a parent. Why? Because it is hard to have parents if depression has them instead. They don't belong to you. They belong to their depression. How this book will help. While there are numerous books detailing what it is like to suffer from depression, there has never before been a book written directly for the children of the depressed. This book answers certain questions. What kinds of situations tend to arise for children of the depressed? How can you come to terms with having a depressed parent? Are there certain skills that may prove helpful? Conversely, are there certain ways that you learn to cope as a child that may be defeating you now and thwarting your happiness as an adult? And if you have your own children, what can you do to make sure that you greatly limit, or better yet, completely eliminate, the passing on of any harmful behavior patterns? The good news is that now, more than ever, there is hope for the depressed and the children of the depressed. While depression can be a silent assassin, killing joy in the family, it is not a life sentence for either the depressed person or that person's children. What's most important for you to know now is that depression is not a death sentence. For instance, one of the more effective methods for treating depression, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, has been a lifesaver for many. In a nutshell, CBT is a way of examining the role that our thoughts or cognitions and behaviors play in determining the quality of our lives, or lack thereof. CBT offers a variety of methods to help us challenge and change certain thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that are causing difficulties so that we can improve the quality of our lives and, more specifically, the quality of our relationships. These same methods can help you, the child of a depressed parent, improve your life and relationships. You can go from seeing depression as a way of life to seeing depression as a chapter in your life. Perhaps it is only an early chapter. Put differently, what happened early in your life need not determine the middle and ending of your story. You can create a new storyline with the real possibility of your life being even richer and more rewarding because of what you have experienced and overcome. So, if there is or was a depressed parent or caregiver in your life, and if your life seems to have become a major weight that you shoulder with as much nobility as you can muster, then this book is for you. If that extra weight makes even daily chores into a burden, the kinds of things that under normal circumstances would be a breeze, then this book is for you. If you are barely able to imagine a different way of being, then this book is for you. In short, if you are ready to become fully healthy, and if you are willing to try something different that stands a very good chance of working, then this book is for you. Why I wrote this book. While I am indeed someone with a doctorate in clinical psychology who successfully treats many clients, I am not just a licensed and practicing therapist. Far from it. I grew up the child of a brilliant and amazing, but periodically depressed and anxious father. So perhaps not unlike you, I have experienced the weight of parental depression. In addition, I myself have worn the foggy, distorted lenses of depression while tending to my duties as a mother. With 2 severe postpartum depressions and no existing professional help, I did not always tend to those tasks all that well. With tremendous guilt and helplessness, I witnessed the effects that my illness was having on my beautiful son and daughter. I have also witnessed the remarkable healing of us all, separately and together. I know it is possible. I have lived it and have since helped thousands of families do the same. My work as a therapist began with my experience as a depressed mother. When I realized what a lack of effective information and outreach there was for mothers suffering from depression, I knew I'd found my life's calling. Only then did I change careers and train to become a licensed therapist. My previous books, Beyond the Blues, Postpartum Depression for Dummies, and Pregnant on Prozac, came out of both of my own experience with depression and my work as a therapist helping others. So please trust that for me, the topic of depression is not some cold clinical term, one that I use to describe the experiences of other people. Therapy, for me, is personal, and so too is this book. What you can expect. What I hope you will find here is a map out of the often flooded lowlands of being a child of the depressed. In essence, what this book offers is a guide to higher ground. If you are not sure if you are a child of the depressed or otherwise might benefit from this book, Chapters 1 and 2 offer some user-friendly assessments to help you sort things out. Importantly, you don't need to be the child of a parent who received a clinical diagnosis of depression for this book to be of service to you. It may have been something as simple as your mother or father experiencing a loss that they never seem to recover from, be it a death in the family or a debilitating physical ailment, divorce, or loss of a home or job. Chapter 1 will have you explore whether your parent was depressed as you were growing up. What might that experience have been like and felt like to you? This chapter will include an exercise to help you consider the severity of your parents' depression. Chapter 2 is where you will explore the relationships within your family and the impact that depression in the family may have had on these relationships. It will look at the family as a whole and how depression could have affected your relationships with siblings, if you have any, and your parents' relationship with each other. Chapter 3 will look at what I have come to view as the basis of all healing, which is support and encouragement. After all, without lots of support and encouragement, how can you begin anything as challenging as examining the role that your parents' depression had in your life? Chapter 3 will also look at a few obstacles to healing that may come up. Chapter 4 will take you into the realm of your thoughts and inner narratives, introducing the idea that we each have voices that live inside us and tell us stories about ourselves. This chapter will help you ponder the possibility that the less helpful of these voices and their stories may come from your past experience as the child of a depressed parent, and will encourage you to tell yourself more supportive and truthful stories about yourself and your life. This chapter will include a brief introduction to cognitive behavioral therapy and its benefits in treating depression. It also contains a profound exercise derived in part from CBT principles that will help you heal your emotional and psychological wounds. Chapter 5 will further explore the realm of your feelings, which are closely related to your thoughts and patterns of thinking. It will help you explore the emotional challenges that may continue to haunt your adulthood because your parent was not emotionally available as you were growing up, and give you some new tools for reparenting yourself to ease the pain of difficult emotions and to allow you to embrace the full range of human experience. Chapter 6 is all about the B in CBT, the behavior element. What we do, or conversely don't do, has an impact on the quality of our lives. This chapter will look at some of the more common behavioral traits that children of the depressed exhibit, and will help you look at your own behaviors so that you can begin to change any that are problematic. Chapter 7 is an in-depth look at the difficulties that children of the depressed may have in maintaining healthy boundaries in relationships. It will teach you how to create better boundaries in all of your relationships and how to negotiate or renegotiate the terms of some of your most intimate relationships. Chapter 8 will introduce the patient path to wellness. Healing takes however long it takes, which is okay. This chapter will help you look at how you are approaching this new journey. It will give you some useful tools to use now and to take with you as you move forward. Chapter 9 will introduce the important practice of taking a step back to gain greater clarity and perspective on your life. Taking a step back emotionally from situations can be useful whenever you are feeling pressured and don't know how to move forward. Chapter 10 will suggest some possible silver linings in the dark clouds of your parents' depression. It will help you discover what your own silver linings are. When you are able to fully accept with gratitude that you are a child of a depressed parent, your healing will be complete, and your life can begin to unfold in ways you may never have dreamed it would or ever could. Learning the new skills that you will acquire in this book will help not only you, but also your children, if you have any. This book is truly about the hope for and the possibility of intergenerational healing, a healing that transcends space and time. Yes, this path of healing is good for you as an individual. You will be healthier and more joyous because of these skills and practices you will cultivate on this journey. But it can also be a priceless gift and blessing you bestow upon your children and they upon theirs. This blessing of healing and redemption can stretch forward as far as the eye can see and your heart can reach, and it begins right here. Chapter 1. When your parent is depressed. Your past can definitely have an impact on both your present and your future. While it may be too bold to say that your past totally determines your present, it clearly has an impact. What happened then can still matter to you now. There are specific issues that arise for those of us who grew up with a depressed parent. To understand how this comes about, you need to first take a look back. Imagine you are an archer with a quiver full of arrows. Having found your target, you pull an arrow from your quiver, place that arrow onto the string of your bow, and take your aim. But before you can shoot the arrow, you must first pull the arrow, along with the string, backward, away from your target. Much of modern therapy has been based upon this principle of going backwards in order to go forward. We go back, examining the past, so we can go forward, stepping boldly into the future. The past has a powerful hold on our awareness, even if we are healthy and functioning at our best. Sometimes the grip of the past becomes all-consuming, and we cannot seem to move forward in life. This is when the past becomes debilitating, so debilitating that we stand there stuck with the arrow drawn back, full of tension and pressure, unable to release it, unable to move forward. Being unable to move forward with no confidence that we will hit our target is one of the main effects of living with depression, whether our own or our parents'. It has probably contributed to your having this book in your hands. Maybe you feel stuck. Maybe you feel frozen and trapped. Whatever your situation is, you can go back and use the past to get a better grip on the present and move forward. This chapter will help you reflect on your experience of living with a depressed parent. It will help you assess your parent's level of depression and begin to see how your experience as a child has continued to have an impact on you, particularly on your sense of self-worth. The chapter begins with a story that may seem familiar in some ways. We each have our own stories to tell about the past, yet children of the depressed have many experiences in common. Neil's story. Neil's dad did all the things that a father is supposed to do. He taught his son how to walk, ride a bike, and drive a car. He wasn't totally absent from Neil's life. Neil knew that his dad cared even when he was very young and experienced his father becoming enraged at even the littlest things. Looking back at his dad, Neil can now see the behaviors of a depressed person who had tried to mask the symptoms of that depression with alcohol. As a result of his father's outbursts of anger when he was a child, Neil now has a very hard time with anger, especially his own. In fact, as far as Neil is concerned, anger constitutes such a hideous display of emotion that he completely avoids it and anything that might trigger it, including confronting people. Neil is so uncomfortable with feeling anger that he avoids any situation that may result in him becoming like his own father was, angry and enraged, often for no apparent reason. As a child, Neil can recall wanting to connect and communicate with his dad. He could sense the distress that his dad was experiencing. Like many children of the depressed, Neil wanted to help his father, even if that was not his role and even though he did not know how to actually help him. Neil was sad because he could not have a deeper emotional connection with his father. Frustrated because he did not know how to reach his father, and resentful for trying so hard and failing. And yet, he undeniably loved his father. He also felt responsible for who his father was and how he behaved. As a result, Neil became the communicator that his dad never was. In many ways, it was as if Neil became the parent because his father was missing. If there was a conflict in the family, it was Neil who would seek to resolve it and bring the parties together to communicate with one another. In later years, Neil realized that his tendencies in relationships were a direct result of how he had wanted to take care of his own father and family as a child. He found it easy to fall into the caretaker role in relationships, but it was impossible to have his own needs met. He was too busy taking care of everybody else's. Neil would then feel the inevitable sadness and frustration he had also felt as a child. The ghost of his father cast a huge shadow over Neil's life. Even though he no longer lived with his dad, in a very real way, his dad still lived within him. The mystery of the depressed parent. As children, we are quite intuitive. Even when the adults in our lives won't openly discuss an uncomfortable situation like depression in the home, kids know when something isn't quite right, or not at all right. There are many reasons why there may be silence on the topic of depression. Sometimes the absence of discussion results from a simple lack of knowledge and understanding, when the adults themselves don't realize what is going on. Often, the parent who is affected, or the other parent, doesn't want to believe that he or she needs professional help. Following the, "if I ignore it, it will get better on its own" strategy, a parent simply may not understand how powerful and effective professional help can be. Alternatively, neither parent may realize that the depressed parent needs help. In other instances, the depressed parent might have sufficient information and even a diagnosis, but feel too ashamed to talk about things. And sometimes the depression is being treated appropriately, but the adults don't know that it's also important to explain what's going on to the children. No matter what the reason, and whether or not the term depression is actually used, children are usually quite aware on some level that depression is present. Mommy or daddy is not well. This is when, as children, we attempt to make up our own explanations. If no one is giving us relevant information on which we can base our own understanding, we have no alternative but to grope in the dark for an explanation of what is happening. We say to ourselves, "Mommy is just tired," or "Daddy just had a bad day at work." even if mommy is tired all the time, or daddy has a bad day at work every day. Common characteristics of depression. Depression can seem to take years from our lives, collapsing long spans of time into a gray sameness where little stands out or registers to us as significant, meaningful, or worthwhile. Just imagine yourself caught in a cloud so all-consuming that you cannot find your way out of it. Imagine an atmosphere so thick and oppressive that you cannot find your bearings. Imagine a state so distraught and debilitating that you cannot even muster the strength to get out of bed in the morning. Now imagine you have children. To get a better view of the past, it will help to consider what depression is and what depression isn't. Depression is a mental illness that can be diagnosed, like any other illness, by observing its symptoms, covered in the list that follows, over a period of time. Major depression exists when a cluster of symptoms lasts over a 2-week period or more. What used to be called dysthymia, a milder form of depression in which symptoms are experienced over a 2-year period or more, is no longer recognized as a separate disorder. The most recent Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM, American Psychiatric Association 2013, differentiates depressive disorders not by their severity, but rather by the length of time the depression is experienced. Depression may be classified as chronic if it lasts for a long time, or episodic if it lasts for shorter periods. If your parent experienced a long chronic depression, it would be categorized in the DSM under the umbrella term of persistent depressive disorder, whether or not your parent's depression was severe or mild. Depression is not a personality weakness or a character flaw. No one chooses to have depression. It is an illness. It can happen to the best and strongest of us, and it should never be judged. However, even though you probably know this intellectually and rationally, emotionally it can be a different story. For example, you may have felt shame or other bad feelings associated with having a depressed parent. If you've experienced depression yourself, you might have noticed how critical and hard on yourself you can be. To make matters worse, over half of depressed adults are too embarrassed to seek treatment because they regard it as a weakness. Your parent may not have received any treatment for their condition, either because help was unavailable or because it was unsought. Even if your parent never received a formal diagnosis of depression, there's a good chance that you figured out on your own that he or she was likely depressed because you witnessed the symptoms of depression. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, 2013, here are some of the main symptoms. Fatigue and decreased energy, loss of interest in one's pleasurable interests, activities, or hobbies, including sex, feelings of guilt, worthlessness, or helplessness, feelings of hopelessness or pessimism, persistent sad, anxious, or empty feelings, aches or pains, headaches, chest tightness, difficulty breathing, or digestive problems that do not ease, even with treatment, insomnia, early morning wakefulness or excessive sleeping, difficulty concentrating, remembering details, and making decisions, overeating or appetite loss, thoughts of suicide and suicide attempts, irritability, restlessness. Later, this chapter will help you explore whether your parent was mildly, moderately, or severely depressed. But for now, it will help to consider more fully what your parents' depression looked like. Here, in a bit more detail, are some characteristics of depression that you might have recognized in your parent. Pessimism. A depressed person sees the glass half empty instead of half full. Rather than expect a good outcome, the depressed person embraces the downside of any situation. Pessimistic people view the world and situations with negativity, and they expect.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?